Battlefield has given us some legendary weapons over the years, but also some of the weirdest and most questionable guns ever put into first-person shooters. With Battlefield 6 on the horizon, I wanted to go back and revisit some of the strangest and most forgotten guns from Battlefield games. And trust me, there's a lot to cover. From squad support submachine guns to resurrected relics, we have a lot in store. Starting off in Battlefield 4, we have the CBJ-MS. While strange in appearance, it doesn't seem terribly weird, right? Wrong. This weapon was designed to not just be a submachine gun, but also a fucking light machine gun. That's right. This weapon was designed to be used with drum mags, a bipod, and a magnified optic for light machine gun type defensive roles. With its special 6.5mm armor-piercing ammo, it could even allegedly penetrate the armor of a Russian APC. I have some doubts to the validity of this claim, because what? It's probably just a marketing claim. But in testing, it was found that the weapon was apparently capable of penetrating 9mm of rolled homogeneous armor, which was the same armor on the sides of Russian APCs. The only problem is, that armor, even on the side, was still at an angle, and generally, penetration is much lower against a sloped surface because of the increased line of sight thickness. Next up, the SMG-08-18 from Battlefield 1. Basically just a mounted machine gun, or heavy machine gun, turned into a freakish little submachine gun. This weapon fired 9mm parabellum, just like modern pistols and submachine guns still do to this day. In real life, we know very little about this weird little thing. It was fed by a bizarre multi-column strip feed device that held 8 rows of 10 rounds each. When first introduced in Battlefield 1, its rate of fire was pretty low, making it essentially useless and very slept on. Only time you'd ever use it is if you needed to use it for a challenge or you just wanted to challenge yourself, generally. However, they updated the rate of fire eventually to make it much higher, which brought it into the category of like top 5 assault weapons, I think. I'd include more info on this weapon if I had it, but like this thing is incredibly mysterious. We don't have very much information on this at all. While I was getting pictures for this video, I actually found out that apparently when the Russians got their hands on this thing, and don't ask me how, I don't know how they did that, this weapon actually was found with a shovel bipod, a fucking shovel for the bipod. It was an actual infantry shovel that they like cut the end off of and they replaced with like a metal clamp, and you would clamp it around the barrel, and I'm assuming you would just get into the dirt and then what the fuck? The Russians noted that this weapon was incredibly overcomplicated, heavy, and too large to be adopted seriously ever. But the author of the weapon should be praised for his unique solution to this problem with the shovel. I just thought that was really fucking funny, so I had to include it. Next up, we have the Bulldog from Battlefield 4. Many of you may be asking, Gregs, why is this weird? Forgotton, yeah, but it's not that weird. It's just a bullpup. Well, that's a good question. It might not look weird from a glance, but what if I told you that these two, they're the exact same fucking gun? The M14 and the Bulldog are the same thing. That's because the Bulldog is actually an upgraded M14. You can tell pretty easily from the right side of the weapon, which is frequently hidden from the player's point of view in Battlefield 4, just because of how the game works. You basically don't ever see that side of the weapon because you can't turn it in the customization screen, and your character doesn't reload it like that. This was actually designed to be a stock replacement kit for the M14/M1A that would allow those weapons that were kind of aging and running a little out of the meta, that allowed them to be fine-tuned for a variety of different situations, and it came in a couple different variations. There's like an older model that didn't really have that much Picatinny rail on it, and then there's the one that we see in the game, which is a pretty modern version. It actually seemed to be a pretty decent way of upgrading aging military hardware, but it is like a cursed weapon by design. It is a bullpupped M14 that is kind of a cursed statement. Yeah, it would just take the stock off, and then you'd replace a few parts, and you had a relatively modern weapon. So yeah, that's something to take note of if you really like the Bulldog from Battlefield. Jumping to everyone's favorite, hardline, yes! We have the HCAR. Some of you very likely know what this is, but for those of you who don't, this is actually a modernized version of the Browning automatic rifle. Yes, that one. The World War I automatic rifle that the U.S. military used all the way into the early stages of the Vietnam War. Foreign advisors that we sent to help train the Vietnamese often picked the BAR over the M16 because of the ammunition reliability problems that the M16 initially had. And apparently the North Vietnamese would always steal the BAR if they got the chance to steal weapons from the South Vietnamese or the US military. They would always try to steal the BAR. They would take anything they could get, but the BAR was a main target because it was so reliable and robust. The HCAR variant, however, has been modernized with a pistol grip, an adjustable AR-15 pattern stock, military spec attachment rails that I believe are Picatinny rails. I don't think they're Weaver rails, but I don't really remember the difference, I'm going to be honest. And an extended magazine that was 30 rounds instead of 20. That being said, this weapon is still too heavy and outdated. Its controls are kind of clunky. They're a little bit better on this model, don't get me wrong, but it is still not something you will ever want to use because this fucking thing is really heavy and it's really bulky, but it is really fucking cool. That is true. It's really expensive though too, so like I will probably never ever get one unless I become filthy rich, so I'm just saying. Also from Hardline, we have the SG-510. This weapon, specifically the original variant, the Sturmgewehr 57, is actually one of my favorite guns ever. If you've looked at my channel before, and those with a keen eye may have actually recognized it from my profile banner art. The SG-510, though, is a Swiss battle rifle that was adopted as the STG-57, and then it was adapted for export to other countries under the name SG-510. This has a wonderfully unique appearance that many people would find to be traditionally ugly. I'm gonna be fair, it is ugly, it is very ugly, but that's exactly why I love it. I mean, look at this thing, man. Like, who could hate this little barrel charging handle? This thing's fucking cool. It also seems like it'd be really convenient because you could just hook that thing really easy with 2 fingers, so that's pretty nice. Also, this thing was given to Swiss service members after they left the military service. For a small administrative fee, they were allowed to take their rifle home with them. The only thing is that it would be converted to semi-automatic when they were sent home. Yeah, dude, it's pretty awesome. I wish I was from Switzerland because I really, really want one of these, and they're really, really expensive. But it is genuinely one of my favorite rifles ever, and I think it's so fucking cool. Next, from Battlefield 5, we have a Japanese wonder, the Type 11 machine gun. This odd little machine gun looks incredibly out of date for a World War II light machine gun, and that's because it sort of was. This was actually the Japanese Army's first light machine gun. It was adopted in 1922, and they were still using it into World War II. It did have a weird little feed system that was a side-mounted hopper sort of arrangement, kind of like a paintball gun, except unlike a paintball gun, this hopper held 6 5-round clips for a max capacity of 30 rounds. These were the same stripper clips actually used by the Type 38 Arisaka rifles, which made logistics a lot more simple for their squads, and it allowed their squad mates to lend ammunition to the machine gunner and vice versa, which is honestly a really smart idea. This gun had a built-in oiler that would oil each round as it was fed into the chamber, which was a kind of outdated system at that time. While it did help the weapon feed more reliably, it also was kind of a double-edged sword, because if that thing was oiled and then dirt and grime got in it, the jam would probably be worse. It was, in fact, very susceptible to dirt and grime building up in the action because the magazine was completely open to the elements. But it actually had pretty decent performance. Also from Battlefield 5, we have the Nambu Type 2A. It's another wonderful little Japanese weapon that has an incredibly unique design. This prototype actually is potentially misidentified in Battlefield 5. It's often referred to as the Nambu Type 1 instead. This is still very often confused and not very clear, but it appears that Japanese sources specifically generally designate this weapon as the Model 1 and the more traditional model as the Model 2. This weird little thing, though, has a pistol grip magazine, not unlike a standard pistol or submachine gun of the modern era, like the Uzi, but it has a rather absurd curved 50-round box magazine. It's very strange. It gives it a very interesting look. This weapon was actually apparently offered for international export, and Britain, of all countries, actually investigated them to see if they wanted to adopt for their tank crews. But no sales were ever made, and the international idea was closed in 1938. The prototype was largely forgotten because of this, and it was abandoned in the wake of its more mature brother, the Type 2, and eventually what would become the Type 100 standard submachine gun of the Japanese Army. finally, back to Battlefield 1. The collection of strangest weapons ever fielded and ever put into a game definitely belongs to Battlefield 1, thanks purely just to its World War I setting. The Villar Perosa is possibly the strangest weapon ever made that's been featured in a Battlefield game. And I know there's weapons like the Calibri, or the Hellregal, or, you know, the Howl Automatic, or the RSC SMG. There's a lot of weird ones. But the thing that did it for me is the one in Battlefield, this one that we have, is more tame than the actual submachine gun that we have in real life. This weapon was a twin barrel, twin magazine submachine gun that was intended for use in a tail gunner position on an aircraft, which is the reason for that traditional spade style machine gun grip that you'd see on vehicles. This weapon actually only had two 25-round mags, like I said, and at its rate of fire, which was 1,500 rounds per minute per barrel, that totaled 3,000 RPM, which obviously 25 rounds times 2, 50, that is not enough for 3,000 RPM. This weapon did have an infantry pattern, though, which was just a mounted variant that they put a different barrel clamp on to keep them together, and they put a, like, crappy bipod on it. They didn't change the grip. They didn't change anything. The one that we see in the game is actually based on one from various movies where it's seen, with an anachronistic pistol grip and a vertical grip, which this weapon was never designed with or intended to use. And the one that we actually have in real life is even weirder because of that. It's the strangest infantry weapon I've seen in a while in terms of just actual usability. What were they smoking with this? It doesn't make any sense. That being said, this weapon, while bizarre and completely impractical, it did end up getting cut into two pieces. Essentially, they cut it right down the middle and took both halves in the production lines and made them into submachine guns on their own. We actually see one of these weapons in Battlefield 1 as well. It is the Revelli Beretta, aka the Automatico M1918. But a weird fact about this weapon and the OVP, its adjacent brother that was also made from the Villar Perosa, I believe, they are debated as being the first submachine guns ever fielded against the MP18, but the Automatico is definitely not, because the Automatico was not even a machine gun. Like, that's right, the Automatico submachine gun in Battlefield 1, that gun's not even, it's not even automatic. That's not even, like, it literally is not an automatic at all. It is a semi-automatic pistol caliber carbine. That's it. They took the Villar Perosa and they made it semi-auto and they made it into a little carbine, a little rifle. Similar in utility to something like an artillery Luger or a C96 carbine. This weapon is not automatic, which really caught me off guard. I am really surprised I didn't know that, and it kind of pisses me off that I didn't know that, but that's really interesting. With those weird guns out of the way, are there any other games or guns you want me to cover? Are there any guns from Battlefield that I missed or that you want me to cover in the future? Should I make more Battlefield videos? Less? Leave it in the comments if you want, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.